happy Saturday morning. Thanks for joining us. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern, getting my time zones correct. And that's earlier, it's 8:30 p.m. Pacific, and Mountain Time is 9:30 a.m. I'm saying that because we have somebody who's joining us on Mountain Time. So hello, Lisa. Please say hello, Carrie from Hawaii. I'm so glad that you guys are joining us today. We have, well, there's a lot to talk about, right? So if we're going to start with some updates, I guess the biggest update would be President Yoon in Korea, as of now, is not impeached. I didn't mean to joke about it, but that was a big vote this morning. Sorry, last night, Korea time, or yesterday. So it was a big deal. It still is a big deal. Everyone following it. And so it's still uncertain what that looks like and what that means. But you know what I wanted to share? That's super important. Hi, Zoe. I really think it's great that he apologized. So if you haven't watched the news, President Yoon apologized. So people are thinking, okay, what's the big deal of an apology? Now, in US culture, it's much more common, or it's just like a standard procedural thing. And you get it even during like a press release or something, or a press statement. Hi, Bet. Hey, Nancy. But in Korea, apologies are harder to come by. Let's not compare it to the K-dramas. So we'll talk about the K-dramas in a second, but it's harder to come by. So it was a very simple, I think he was literally on air or said it for like 3 minutes. I think that's what the journalist said, and I watched it. It was very simple, and it was an apology. I think that made a difference. And I think, just so you guys know, the reason I'm talking about that from a mental health perspective, apologies or saying sorry, feeling sorry, and showing your just sorriness, and all the above with empathy and compassion is actually very profound. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes when you hear an apology, it's almost like, it doesn't mean all things are forgiven, depends on the situation, but some of your anger and even all that angst kind of washes away. And that's all we need to hear at times. And so a lot of times in certain situations or certain events, people just want that apology publicly. For instance, South Korea is still waiting for an apology when it comes to the comfort women. That is a huge deal in that sense. So him apologizing, the president apologizing, I'm not saying I didn't see that coming. I actually didn't really think about that. But when I saw the headlines on that, I went, that to me was a big deal. So I just want to, and I love everybody saying hi. Oh, hi from Metro Detroit, Karen. Love it. Oh, you're going on my tour in April. Yay. Cannot wait to see you and meet you in person. He really didn't expand on the apology at this moment. That's the latest. So he just simply simply apologized and maybe addressed a little bit of like the hearsay and things like that, but not my reasoning, not like, nothing more than that. But honestly, I think that was okay. At this moment, it was just, what happened was just so right out there that it was great just to hear an apology. So I just had to bring that up. And I'm bringing that up because it always relates to when you get an apology, or when you apologize, or when you're like prepping to apologize, or when somebody apologizes to you after some time, it does do something, right? It at least stirs some emotion, even if it doesn't forgive the actual act, right? And that's what we're talking about in Korea. It doesn't mean it's all gone and done and everything's better. No, but I do believe that it stirred something, and that might have something to do with the fact that the vote did not go for him being impeached. So I just wanted to bring that up. I always like to share that from just from a learning lesson of the power of an apology. And so the other update that I want to show you is this viral video. It's making its rounds, but I want to show it from the Korea Times. I like to use the news. Take a look at this video showing what it looks like to peacefully protest in Korea. And I think you guys want to. If you guys didn't see this is a reel from the Korea Times. There are a lot of people out there protesting, and they're showing all these videos of them playing Blackpink Rosé and Bruno Mars' song that's viral, and with light sticks. I mean, you just saw that, right? So for a brief glimpse, if you didn't see the headlines, you'd be like, oh, They're at an outdoor concert. This is not to make light of anything that's happening, but that's kind of, I just think it was like, I don't know how to describe the feeling when I saw that and it's spreading. I think it's kind of cool. I did a live yesterday with a journalist and we talked about peaceful protests. For those who've been on the tours, you've seen them. Maybe you walked through one, they're pretty common and they are pretty peaceful. Yes, they're loud. People might be shouting messages, but there's not screaming and shoving and right. And that's why it's allowed to happen practically every other day. So that to me is just how Korea's doing it. And I think they're moving things along. So it's just a good sign to see that. And who doesn't want to see light sticks in the air if you're a K-pop fan? So that's one thing I want to share, you guys. Thank you for saying hello. Thank you again. Welcome. We're going to have a few folks join me shortly for a deep dive on the trunk. And we're also going to talk when the phone rings. But real brief, I want to answer some questions. I got a few questions this week about how do you handle folks who are not K-drama or K-pop fans? Meaning with the news in Korea, that's literally everybody's watching. And unless you're living under a rock, what's going on in South Korea. People who don't generally follow K-dramas or K-pop may know nothing about South Korea. I'm used to that because that's how I grew up, but also I'm used to that because I'm in that company as well. And I've gotten a few folks ask me, hey, it's kind of discouraging when people are like, why would you even go visit this country? Number one. Hi, Vera from the UK. And people are like, why? Like, oh my goodness. So does this, is this like North Korea, South Korea? I still get that. People are like, oh, one time I said something like, well, the protests going on in Korea. They're like, you mean which Korea? And I was just like, okay. I said South Korea. I just I sometimes give the face going, that's what I meant. And these are my friends, right? So how do you handle something like that? Well, you're not there to convince them to be a K-drama fan or a K-pop fan and like South Korea. That's up to them. They're just going to see your passion for it and let your passion and joy speak for itself. Don't let them discourage you, even though it is discouraging. Then I would just shift and kind of take a little break from people who are like, yeah, why would you go on another tour to Korea? And what are you doing watching K-dramas? It's negative. You don't kind of need that. So separate yourself. I certainly have. They're still my friends. I just don't sit there going, oh my goodness, well, hello, I wrote a book on K-dramas. Like everybody knows it, but I don't force it on them because you can't change someone's mind. Really. Like I remember I said, you can't change people. Yeah, you can't. In fact, it'll just exhaust you. So just pivot and go, well, you know what? I still love South Korea, or I know why I love K-dramas and K-pop, and I know what they mean to me. So let that joy speak for itself. But the other thing I want to say, number one and number two is if you want to stay firm and not let your confidence falter, give your elevator pitch. That's kind of what I asked on my channel. The reason why I asked it is be ready, not be like fumbling. In fact, when I get the example is when media asks me, why are K-dramas beneficial to mental health? I got to have a good answer ready, not be like, well, no. I got to be like, here's why, is what I'm seeing. Be clear. So get your answer ready. I do this all the time in my workshops. Get your story in 2 minutes or less of why you feel so strongly for this culture, or why you fell in love with K-dramas, why you love BTS. Have that 2-minute speech ready. And you're like, oh, yeah, you know why I go to visit Korea? Well, I went on this tour. I love this people. And here's why. It's what this has done for me. Don't share this, though, to convince the person. You are sharing this, again, for yourself to reiterate and build that confidence. Because when they see that confidence, they may still be like, they may not agree. They may still be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But your job is not to convince them. Your job is to be like, look how confident I am and look how happy I am. And this is what it's done for my mental health. And here are my new friends. That's great. You just say that and it's going to make you feel better. In fact, trying to convince the other person, I always tell people, actually makes you feel worse because their reaction might be, oh, that's nice. Or their reaction will be joyful and then they don't really buy into it. And then it disappoints you. So my point is, please share your 2-minute elevator pitch, 2-minute talk story, why this country is important to you, why you are following it, why you would go back even in the midst of an impeachment, whatever. I mean, we could say that about the US. We have it too, right? And so, oh, I love Lisa saying that. You should never apologize for the things you love. Yes, and we do. And remember I said it's not a guilty pleasure. And actually the best thing that came out of my book was men my male friends saying to me and texting me or DMing me or messaging me saying things like, and LinkedIning me saying things like, thank you so much for your book. I went, oh my gosh, you read my book? They go, yeah, because I always felt like I had to apologize for watching K-dramas as a male. He's like, you just kind of convinced me of why I like them. And now I have leverage. So I'm like, yeah, but still I told him or told them, please be ready to explain that leverage. Don't be like, oh, here's Jeannie's book. Of course, it's great to spread my book, but also be like, hey, you know what? When I was going through this rough time, blah, 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 it helped me. You can share that, especially if they're your friends and they kind of know about your rough times or happy times. So that's my 2 cents. I hope that helps you. Repeat again, you do not share about your love for Korean culture or your love for anything to convince the other person to love it too. You are reiterating your love for it, and how they accept it is up to you, but you will feel good that you shared it. And then it just makes you more confident. And that is just literally narrative therapy 101, right? Or your identity 101, and being really rooted in that. So let me know if you ever want to practice your 2-minute K-drama pitch. That's why I always say 2 minutes or less. It can be less than that. All right. I hope that helps you. Thank you, Bettina. Okay. So let's go to the questions that I didn't answer last week that I saved for this week. And this way we can answer them, and then we're going to bring people on. How common is it for someone to offer a sincere apology by kneeling in South Korea? Funny. So I've never seen it. And I've asked my family and stuff. So I think back in the day, like the Joseon dynasty, the Shilla dynasty, that's what they did to royalty. I have seen not an apology, but you do get on literally when you do the chol, right? The bending down, which we're going to do shortly for New Year's. You do go on all your knees and you literally bow to the floor where your head is on the floor. We do that still, but that is out of respect, out of the tradition of the new year, and you're respecting your elders, but you're not saying sorry that way. The most deepest apology I've seen sorry is through family members, like hugging or actually bowing deeply. But I personally have never seen a kneel, and I've asked folks and they're like, yeah, that's dramas for K-drama, like the drama for the K-drama. So I thought, okay, so nobody could really explain it, except to say, hey, that was what we used to do back in the day. I meant not we. Back in the day in the dynasties where that's how they apologized, and they did that because they had a king. We don't have that here, or they don't, not here in South Korea. So I think it's just more bowing deeply. Like when I had an incident that happened, even on our tours, we had that bow deeply given to us. And let me tell you, even on the receiving end of that, you feel bad. I'm like, okay, I didn't want to make you feel bad, but it is that gesture of that deep bow. I'm talking really deep. And then they stay low. You almost have to say, stop, right? So that is more accurate. So I had to share that. But that's just a showing of humility, and that's just how Koreans show that. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Is it more difficult for South Koreans to embrace a slower, more relaxed lifestyle? Yes. Actually, I have to make a conscious effort when I'm there to still maintain my own pace. I'm already fast paced in the US, but it is like supersonic speed in Korea. Do you know that even when I'm in Korea, my husband and I will say things like, wait a second, did a week just go by? Time goes by fast anywhere. But I have even spoken about this to Korean nationals. It is on supersonic speed in Korea. Like I can't even remember the week. We're doing. So it is a very fast-paced lifestyle, particularly in Seoul, which is why people outside of Seoul will say, yeah, I had to leave Seoul. So Seoul is a lifestyle in itself, and then everywhere outside is different. So let's just say it's more Seoul lifestyle, and it is very fast-paced. Remember the bali bali? If you were on my tours, the tour guides will say, bali bali, hurry, hurry up. Yeah, that's still, well, I'll joke about it and people will say it to each other. They're like, yeah, we have that bali bali culture, but they don't apologize for it. They're like, yeah, we do. That's how it is. And I will say it stresses me out too. So it's difficult, which is why mental health or slowing down or the concept of mindfulness, they're grasping it, but it's still hard to grasp like daily. My hope is that I say, hey, you could do this daily where you can meditate and just take your time taking care of yourself and then do your work. They're like, huh? Right? They see it more as like, oh, I'll go on a retreat or I'll do it as an event. I'm like, no, that's not, you want to be able to do it every day. So I think that's why it's just a very efficient mentality. If you're on a kiosk, I'll give you an example of what I do. I can read Korean. I'm not super fast like I am in English. I'm like sitting going, okay, there's 60 choices. So I'm sitting there and I will literally within 2 seconds, someone's like breathing on my back. So I'm like, okay, so they obviously want me to hurry up and I don't want to rush. So I'll be like, go ahead. So it takes me sometimes us forever to order because we're like, oh my gosh, we just want to check out our choices and it takes time. So now I just feel like I know how to handle it, but it's relaxing is seen as a dirty word in Asian culture, not just Korean culture. I just think Asians or even the diaspora in the US will say, yeah, by the way, the minute we sit down to watch something, our parents are like, what are you doing? Right. So my parents are still like, oh my gosh, a K drama is an hour. And I'm like, yes. They're like, what are you doing for that hour? You're watching? I'm like, yeah, right. And so my own parents struggle with that. So they themselves don't know how to quite relax. And so I work hard at it and I do it through the K dramas. Okay. Let me just tell you that because if I don't, then I wouldn't be able to do half my job. All right. So let me move on. Just sharing that. K dramas often show mothers as absent or distant. How true is this in real life? So I can only speak for the people I know, and everybody I've interacted are super, super, super close to their mothers. So I just think this is a little bit more of a trope. And maybe again, nothing really is always made up. So perhaps back in a day, mother is being busy, father is working. There is some of that. In the US, we have something called latchkey kids. So they had to come home by themselves and I had a stay-at-home mom, so she was always around, even though I didn't want her around, just saying. But my husband was a latchkey kid. So they have to come home by themselves with their key and they come home. So that is kind of also a similar concept in Korea too, but that doesn't mean they're absent, And so when we see it in the K dramas, I just feel like that's a little bit more of the trope. But maybe perhaps it existed back in the day, but I know so many people who are super close to their families and their parents and maybe too close because they live in the same home, right? Because of financial situations or whatever. So it's actually what I see is the opposite. That's why I had a hard time when I saw this and I went, I know it's definitely there, but needless to say, that doesn't mean that doesn't exist in families. I don't want to go across the board and say this is how it is, a blanket statement. Just the families I know are extremely close to their parents, physically and emotionally. And I think that might be more of the trope. But again, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Because and also, by the way, you could be living with the parent and they could be completely emotionally distant. You know what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, you could be physically living in the same house, or you could be physically worlds away, but emotionally close. So I always say that because I keep in touch we're very good with keeping in touch with our kids. So even though we're like in South Korea, I don't feel that as much. And I believe they don't either because it's like, thanks to technology and talking, but you could be in the same house and don't talk. And that could be like when the phone rings, right? Good morning, Joanne. Okay, so let me move on to that. I think working mothers and mothers always have that guilt too of resting, but I always emphasize if you do not rest, oh my goodness, we can't do anything. Just saying. All right, let's move on to the next one. Sorry, I was just seeing a private chat. I've never thought of love confessions being initiated by the woman until I watched it in K-dramas. Seems like that's the norm in the K-dramas. Or if it's totally accepted there. Is this just in the dramas? No. I mean, I just know. I mean, again, I'm not talking for every couple. I'm not talking to every couple in South Korea, but from folks that I know, yeah, no, they're much more forward. And there's lots of folks who initiate. And I think that's great. So I just think the way they do it in the K drama is that they make it super cute and make it a big deal. But no, and I think it's very similar to American culture. Women can initiate, and so I'm seeing it more and more. And in fact, I do believe depending on the personality, like if the female's a little bit more outgoing, you see that. So some of that has to do with personality, someone who just doesn't know how to say it. So the female says it for them or vice versa. Right. So I do think it's equal to what's happening in society, women being more forward. And again, you can be more forward and initiate and be like, hey, make the first phone call or text or whatever. So I said phone call, so I'm still old school, but like texting or whatever, or Snapchat, that could be initiated. But after that, it could be up to somebody else or the male to reciprocate and then go from there. So that could be the initial initiator and then you let the guy go with it. Does that make sense? So I don't think it's just in the dramas. I think it is also, you see in Korean society. Okay, next one. Okay, why do people stay? So we're going to get to the trunk, and I wanted to transition with this question. Why do people stay in toxic relationships? The trunk's exes were so toxic together. So I'll just answer this, and then let's talk about it and break it down, folks. And give me your answers in the chat box. But it's like you've heard that term, and a lot of you say it to me. Hurt people hurt people hurt others, right? Hurt people also attract one another. There is a similarity in finding a common trauma or even a common joy, like K dramas. That's why there is that chung. There's also the chung through toxicity, meaning there's this commonality that you found. You were former addicts, for instance. I'm bringing that up because I see that, right? Addicts who are in a support group, they went through a difficult time together and they're still not necessarily healthy, but they're in some sense not attracted romantically, just attracted to one another. So that toxic is very common. And it's not like it's common and let's accept it. It's just, it happens because they relate. They have very similar traits, and that's what happens, right? But that said, that is why we see such unhealthiness, because no one can help the other. So they're both in that same stuck place. And that's why it's really important to understand my one key point before I bring my astute community in, that marriage or coupleness or a partner or a committed relationship will not solve your problems and or save you and or change you, right? Or change the person. Meaning the last thing you want to do, and I tell people, is don't go into a relationship or even start dating remotely unless you know who you are. Now we still do. I can't stop somebody from dating, but the whole point of the trunk is people who really don't know each other, didn't know what they want, struggled, right? And just kind of lost themselves. Then they're in a relationship. That's the toxicity too. And so I see that that's probably the number one thing people tend to see all the time. You're in a relationship and it's not healthy, or you're not healthy. But the whole point is, I'd rather you not be getting married or in a relationship because it's what you should do, number one, or you feel like it'll help, bring happiness. Someone else should not be responsible for your happiness. They should definitely attribute to it. And they also attribute to your unhappiness, but they should not be the ones being there going, I got to make Jeannie happy. That's why I exist, right? Or vice versa. I got to make you happy. That's why. No, your own happiness is in your own hands. Just like I said, your own identity is in your own hands and how you present that. So that's my own point of the trunk. So that's how I'm answering that. There are two toxic people who don't know themselves. They find each other and then they stay in that toxic cycle. But there's always hope for them. And that's why external forces are really important. So I'm going to pause there. And because I'm kind of alluding to this. If you didn't see the trunk, I'm really sorry, but we could talk about it. So let's bring on the folks who want to talk about the trunk. Actually, I think it's all of us. Let's see if we can fit everybody in. I have these beautiful folks from my community, and they are, let's bring them on. Let's see here. Yay! Yay, I see everybody. Okay, so we have Linda and Joe and Alva and Kim. We didn't coordinate, but we do look good, right? As a purple. Is there a way to make their boxes bigger? I think I'm too big. I'm saying this to my producer. Yay, thank you.
Oh, look, we
yes, look how pretty everybody looks. So let's talk the trunk. What do you guys think? And you know what? Let's start with this. What do you think of the title? Who wants to start?
Well,
Linda.
Yeah, that's me.
By the way, Linda is a 3-time tour participant. Come April.
That's right. I'm coming in April. That's right. And I was on.
Okay. Linda, go ahead. What do you think of the title?
I think the title is really important. And I think it ties in really nicely with what you just said about toxicity. I really like that comment because I had never thought of a chong of toxicity. And yet it is an absolutely wonderful term you just used, and it goes perfect with this. If you think about a trunk as a suitcase, luggage, and then take it to the word that has a different connotation, which I use, called baggage. And a trunk is really where you carry your baggage. And this particular show was about people who couldn't, in my opinion, much of it was about people who could not escape the baggage of their previous lives. Each of them is carrying and holding tightly to something that was not good for them. And it was reflected in so much of the imagery and so much of the things in this. To me, the trunk was like a 10 of 10 because it not only had wonderful characters, wonderful acting, but the writing was just beyond superb. And I would just only look at the imagery and symbolism of like the trunk, the light that hung in that spiral staircase that watched everybody, that was the eye of the past, never letting go of the present. And then getting to the wondering it myself as a mystery buff, what is going to happen with this trunk? I'm waiting for a dead body, right? Trunks usually have dead bodies in them. So all the way up to episode 4, please don't, or next to last episode, please don't kill any of them, I'm thinking. And yet it didn't have a body in it, but it had a whole other meaning. It had everybody's baggage. And until those bags were either unlocked, because I love the symbolism of the lock, which was on the trunks and also on the apartment that our lead girl kept living in no matter what, until she could permanently lock it and walk away, and until he could wisely say, I'm not only going to leave this house, I'm going to destroy it and build a new one so I don't accidentally come back. The houses are like trunks, are like closed rooms. They're all symbols of not being able to leave something and not being able to move on, to me. So I watched that throughout the whole show, and that's what I really enjoyed, along with the actors. I thought they were absolutely amazingly good. So that's kind of my take on the title.
Yeah, I love the trunk. And then anybody else want to expand on the title of the trunk? And you guys know at the end what happens. Yes, Kim.
So
October 21, just pointing out. Yes, go ahead.
I thought the title might have been a little misleading, because for up until maybe like the 7th or 8th episode, we never knew what was in any of the trunks. The stalker alluded to the fact that there was some contract in one of them, but we never saw what was in the ex-wife's trunk until I think episode 8. And then it kind of all made sense, kind of why she was such a nut job. But the one thing that I thought was interesting, and again maybe a little misleading, was that, you know, you look at the Netflix description and it said romance, and for the first 4 or 5 episodes I was like, really?
That's a good point.
Romance? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And you didn't get that until like the last few episodes with the 2 main characters, you know, because it was just like this business arrangement and all that sort of thing. But my thing was, I kept wanting to know what was in the trunks, what was in them.
Now, the lead, though, I thought she did say the marriage contract was in her trunk.
But we never knew what, I mean, and the manual, apparently the manual.
The manual.
That they always alluded to, but we never got to see what was in her trunk. So
That's true.
Maybe not.
But maybe that's a symbolism of locking away that manual, tossing out something that we could talk about that. But like that, I feel like that's also symbolic. You guys know what the ex-girlfriend or ex-wife opened up in the trunk.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
That was amazing.
So anybody wanted to mention it, like just for the audience in case, like that was symbolic, I thought. Alva? I feel like
so I think for me, in addition to, you know, everything else that's been mentioned, it's also about secrets, right? And if you remember, probably years ago, I remember my grandmom would have the small little trunk underneath her bed where she would keep little bit of trinkets, memorables, knickknacks, and it used to have like letters or, you know, memorable items from childhood. And sometimes it's kept away because one is you don't want to remember the past. Sometimes it could be a hidden. I remember my grandmom keeping a love letter from, you know, her first lover, right? So I think also a trunk signifies secrets. And I think if we see throughout this drama, the ex-wife had all the baby items in it. So I think there was a part of her that was holding on to what she did when she did, you know, to lose the baby. And it is symbolic of secrets. And I think for me, initially, I was waiting, like, what will happen with this trunk? Are they going to show more of the trunk? But if you notice throughout, they show it very sporadically, right? They show her, you know, moving, you know, carrying the trunk to the new house. like someone mentioned, it's your emotional baggage that you carry along. They show the trunk hidden in the closet, and they show briefly touching it, right? It is a symbolic of memories or things that you keep away and you don't want to deal with. And then towards the end, they show how the trunk is submerged in the lake, and it's about letting go, probably, right? About burying it all, and then when you open the trunk, it's about a release of everything that's been holding you back. So there's so much of symbolism in this drama. I have to agree. I mean, I started off very apprehensive, and I was like, I'm not going to watch this because it was so dark, right? The domestic violence, just the negativity. But when I got past, I think episode 2 or episode 3, I just fell in love with it, and I watched it for Gong Yu. But then after that, it was just for all of these emotions that came with it. And the best part I like about K dramas is you have to read the emotions. And a drama like this is what makes you think about those underlying messages that comes across from eye contact, from hand gestures, from food, from just on, like, that tomato out of the burger, like things like that, right? So it's not your traditional rom-com, it's not the traditional cute K drama, but I think for me it is love in its pure, raw, unconventional form, because love is just not positive, love is also negative, right? And I love it. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I never thought I'll say this. I mean, I started off with it being a 6. Then I said, oh, it's an 8. But then I think when I was thinking about this session today and what I wanted to talk about, I'm like, I love this drama so much. It's a 10.
Wow, that's great. Yeah,
Awesome,
yeah,
Al.
the trunk. I think the first scene, wasn't it her with the trunk? I was
It's
trying to
just
think.
the trunk.
It's
It's just the trunk going into water, disappearing out of sight, and then we pop up in the presence. Well, that's another thing we could talk about is
That's true. That's true. Sorry. But then the first time we see the female lead, she's holding the trunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
that. And that trunk is actually a very beautiful
Beautiful.
trunk, So anyways, Joe, I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts.
Okay,
Joe,
so I'm going to
talk.
veer off a little bit. So I was very, like, just like everyone said, it was like the first couple of episodes, I was like, I don't know. But then I said, I'm going to give it a shot because Gang Woo, yes, love him. And it was a different role for him. So I thought, I'm going to try this. So I kept watching. There was a shock value in there, the nudity. I mean, I was okay with some of it. Then all of a sudden, but for a K drama, okay, I was just like sitting there, and I thought,
smacked in the
close
face.
my mouth.
Yeah.
But you needed that in there for some reason. It was okay. It worked. I liked the relationship between the two, the ex-wife and the present wife, because the present wife was so protective of him. That's when you knew there was definitely, and the contract would never come out, because there was definitely a feeling there. You could sense it. You could see it. He loved her. She loved him, and that ex, okay, was, like her, keeping him in with the pills, and she was repeating history for him because he'd had a really rough childhood. And so as I started to see, like, the pills were coming, she was giving him the pills and whatnot. Then all of a sudden this new wife steps in, and which to me, it was a far-fetched storyline, but again, it worked.
What part was far-fetched?
The whole, like, a business that you can go
yeah.
and
The marriage.
Contract marriage.
Watch
I
someone
was
started
I was-
somewhere in
yeah, I was like, no, wait a minute.
yeah,
but,
far-fetched. It's like a marriage contract trope, right? But
I mean, I know that there are arranged marriages, but this one here
Yeah.
was kind of, it was interesting. And so when I saw the two of them and I saw the two wives go at each other, I was like, yes, because the ex wanted him back and thought she was getting him back, because there was no way he was going to leave her because he was so dependent. But I knew the dependency was wavering, because when he fell asleep on the couch with his present wife, that had never happened before. He couldn't sleep. He had insomnia, and because of his dreams, but she was there for him. So that's when I started to realize he's moving away from the ex, right?
Yeah.
And that was good. The other thing I wanted to point out too was the trunk. It was in his closet. And so for me, I was thinking, is that his trunk? Because if you remember, when she walked out on the street into traffic to either unalive herself or get rid of the child, the thing he said in the ER was, save the baby, save my child, save that, if do whatever you can. So when I saw the trunk in his closet, and I wouldn't mind anybody weighing in on this, I thought it was his. I thought he kept that trunk and he put the baby stuff in there because he
interesting.
wanted that child so badly.
Mhm.
So there,
Yeah.
I don't know, and I think it might have been all hers, but I, for some reason, was thinking, okay, well, that trunk is in his closet. It's sitting there. It's
Or
been
she
there.
put it in there. She
Or
could have put
she-
it in there.
yeah.
There was a scene where she bought it, right? They both both leads bought it at that store. So I do remember that, but
Yes.
that is an interesting point.
Yes.
It was in his closet.
Yeah.
No, and actually Zoe is saying it's not that far-fetched. I think it's actually a good business model. She's talking about the marriage company. Well, I mean, I think there is such thing as mail order brides, right? And so,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's still,
True,
it's not, you're
true.
right. It's not completely gone. I
Yeah.
was just going to say something about the drugs. So no, I'm not, there is in our field, there are people who are addiction specialists. I don't have that specialty, but I will say the codependency is actually the ex-wife. The ex-wife is codependent.
Absolutely.
Like it looks like Kong Yu is,
Yeah.
but it's not. I mean, he's just on the drugs and she got him there, but she kept him
Yeah.
because she's dependent on him, which is why she was so toxic,
Well, she
Like,
spied on him through the camera. I mean,
Camera,
that
I
was
know,
her way
yes.
of controlling
that was creepy.
the situation. That
Very.
was super creepy.
But that
And
light,
in-
that's what Linda was talking about, the symbolism of the light.
Yeah.
Like, like it's like this eye watch. I mean, it was a little creepy. What did you think about, as we're talking about this, what did you think about the ex-wife's marriage husband, contract husband?
Very
Like,
interesting.
what's his role though?
Very hot.
He was pretty.
Well,
Yeah.
we didn't.
I
we
won't
didn't
deny
get to-
that. I had to look him
He
up
was
because I didn't
pretty.
really recognize him. So
We didn't get to see what was in his trunk. We didn't get to see what we didn't. I
Well, we saw
don't mean
most
it.
everything else.
Why are you laughing? I mean, we
you
didn't.
thought
get
you
to
meant
see-
literally. Sorry.
We don't know
Okay.
his baggage. The only little look at his the tiny look at his baggage we got was when we were when they let us know towards the end that
Yeah.
he had witnessed
The
the
stalker.
stalker killing one of his fellow people.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
obviously that would play into how it kind of ended. But
Yeah.
I think that we didn't know a whole lot about him. But can I say one other quick thing?
Yeah. Of
To
course.
what we were just talking about? The wife in I rewatched episode 1 and 2 just to remind myself. And she tells him very early on, she tells the husband she's set up a woman for, I hate you. And she does. I mean, I don't think she loves him at all. I think she hates him. And the whole thing is the relationship is all about punishing him because he chose to, she heard him say, no matter what happens to her, save the baby. And from then
Yeah.
on, I think that really sent her down. So I don't know for sure, but my feeling is that
I
was
feel like she
really what
hated him for that, for
hate
sure,
slash
yeah.
love.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I was gonna say there's so I didn't rewatch it, but they said they knew each other for 30 years. So they obviously were
Kindergarten.
college, whatever.
They were kids.
So there is, yeah, go ahead.
I think they were kids. Sorry, I think somewhere it was
Kids, right,
mentioned
were
that they
kids
grew up together.
Right,
They were
they
kids.
showed the scenes of them as kids. So Koreans love, that's another trope, childhood, right? Kids. Yeah, so I think good point, Nancy. I think she hated him. Like I would definitely say by that point it's good that they were not together, even though she was like, let me get back together with you. But I just think she hated him for that. But she was also on her own. She herself, on her own diurnal spiral. I mean, basically, even leading up to that, it was so interesting seeing the way they showed her pregnancy. Like that was a little bit hard for me to watch, right? She clearly was like miserable, hated it,
Mhm.
right? And so I just think part of this whole trunk is about like that convention or that the marriage system or like the whole convention of having a baby, right? She realized she didn't, or she never wanted to, or wasn't ready, or whatever that is, but she still felt that trauma. I actually loved my very only redeeming moment for her was at the end when she opened up the trunk. Like, I really didn't like her, and that's okay. I mean, I feel like it's okay if you don't like the character, but I really just didn't like her overall, even if she had her own issues. I was like, gosh, some people are just, she had her own sickness, right? And she needed to deal with that. But then when she opened it, I thought the acting was good, where that's why I thought maybe, oh my, this was a woman who just really just needed to, was struggling with that whole concept of a baby and still had that trauma, But yeah, he also, he shares the reason why he also wanted the baby. He saw her do it. Like, I think he knew when she walked in front of the car, right?
Yeah.
And so that is, I don't know how somebody would feel seeing that in real life, like how you can get over that. So anyways, I'll pause now. Let's talk about the relationship between the two leads.
I just love the two leads. Can I just bring this up where, how the football match used to be the center of, it was the distraction for them to actually sit together and talk. And I don't remember which episode this was on, but she was sitting and watching the match. He comes in. I think it was after she brushed him off and she kind of gave him a piece of her mind and said, you go back to your mansion. And he comes there. They have that discussion. And then he asks her, so when this contract ends, are you going to go back to that fiance, Doha, I think, if I'm not mistaken? And then she looks at him and she says, are you also planning to go back to your ex-wife? And it was their conversation through their eyes looking at each other where I felt that was that moment that there was this unspoken confession about how they felt with each other.
I remember that scene.
And yeah, they just sat at the end of the couch. The football match was was loud, and the conversation was more like a secondary thing that was happening, and there was just this body language. And this drama, I think, was all about that body language. Things that they said beyond what was being said. Things like, do you want to eat? When actually he wanted to ask her, what did you do when you went to that house? Right? Those small little gestures in the morning of trying to get him to eat something versus asking, did you have a good night's sleep or did you take a pill? And I remember when she went to the house of the ex-wife, she saw the video camera and she watched him open that drawer. I think there she was expecting him to have that blue pill. And then it was almost like, and then he took something else. And so there's just a lot of communication without actual communication.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yes, Joe.
Sorry, I was going to say what really I sensed the feelings between the two of them. What really kind of got me is when he walks into the ex-wife's place to see that he's seeing that they have been filmed with the chandelier and the lights and whatever. And he's watching and he starts clicking on all the files. And he sees one file where she sits at the table. She now knows she's being, filmed, and she looks up and then she just sobs in her hands, and his eyes got teary and you could see the anger in him. And that's honestly, like, that got me, even though there was anger and whatnot, but it was almost like you could sense the feelings that they had for each other right there and then, because she'd been protecting him. Right? Because he kept saying, why didn't you tell me? But she was trying to protect him. That scene kind of resonated with me. And I'm not 100% sure, like the relationship with her and the ex, her and her fiance, the present wife and the fiance. I had a hard time at the end at what they were. I mean, I know that they separated and I understand, but it was almost like, I don't know. She was, I don't know. I don't know. Your opinions would be good, but.
Well, I'd love to Linda, we haven't heard from you in a while. Like, thoughts on that, or just, there's a lot, right? You brought up something. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was also a very powerfully emotional scene. The scene with the female lead and her fiance. But I love that you shared about them looking at the cameras and realizing, I thought her reaction, I thought she was going to tell him, but then I guess it makes sense in her character that she didn't, But
would you?
And
then there's a whole other a lower level of relationships going on here, which is friendships and past histories, because the ex-wife chose the present wife, which
Right.
one would think was maybe just a little thing, but it develops out that the present wife's best friend and another friend from college went to the same school as the ex-wife, and the ex-wife used her toxic behavior and ended up causing the suicide of the current wife's best friend. That starts to slowly be dribbled out at you as it goes on. So the connection between the two of them was toxic from the beginning. The ex-wife picked someone that she felt maybe she could control
Good point.
because
Oh my
she'd
God.
already killed the other one, and maybe she felt that, oh, she can control him and continue to, as I think Zoe Paradis had said, she wanted to keep punishing.
Yeah. She just wanted to keep
Punishing him
punishing.
forever. So I thought that was
And Kong
kind
Yu
of
went to the
too.
same college too. Don't forget, Kong Yu was part of that whole college as well.
That's right. They were all in the
Yeah.
same.
They
That's
all
right. They
were.
were.
They,
Right.
Same.
yeah. Like when I
Well,
saw
that's
that,
just another thread underneath it too of
that is such a good point.
binds them and
You guys
tears them
remember that?
apart.
Yeah. The female lead's former, like their best friend died of suicide. Yeah. That's how she
Which
first
is-
met Kong Yu through all of that. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
because it was the graduation where they were taking the photo in the graduation
Yeah.
gown,
That's right.
and his mother had just died, and she was at the memorial park because she had just interred her friend, and she sees him on the bench, and she
Yeah.
sees him on the bus, and then he shows up and he's got no shoes on, or he's
Yeah.
got broken shoes. So she finds shoes for him, and then in swoops the soon to be wife, the one that we know as the ex-wife.
Yeah.
It was so twisty. That was just the word that just kept coming to mind for me, is that watching those first 3 episodes, I was like, this is so twisted. I had no idea how it was all going to play out but it kept me watching. I mean, it wasn't so weird that I just had to turn it off. But there were times when I was like super uncomfortable.
Mhm.
You just
Yeah, the first 4 episodes were really tough. I really enjoyed the last 4 a lot, but you needed the first 4 to get to the last 4, you know?
yeah.
So and so I get it, but I think it was like episode 6 I went, I'm actually enjoying this because I think it was maybe it's just me. I was starting to see their healing. I was just starting to feel healing happening. So I was like, okay, like I felt like some burden lifted from me. I was like, this is so twisted, heavy. First 4 episodes going, oh my gosh, is this what we're going to watch? Thank goodness we started just seeing things develop. And I think it was episode 5 or 6. I felt like things were happening in their journeys, you know, even in the ex-wife. I mean, I still didn't like her character, but the toxicity, like, again, somebody who people would say narcissist. I hate using that word loosely, but like she obviously has her own, like she would need her own help separately, right?
She struck me as very passive aggressive.
Well,
Very
anybody who's passive
passive-aggressive.
aggressive also has issues with communication. Like, you know, that right there means you're not confident in who you are. You don't know who you are. She would have needed her own help pre-marriage, during that time when she bullied the girl, you know, or like drove her to suicide. So I think all of that I guess they were just showing how deep her toxicity is, like just went way back to show.
Yeah.
It might have helped smooth us into why the fake wife was more empathetic to him than she might have been to someone else. Because she knew the ex-wife had done damage before. So maybe
Did she know?
She knew, well, the contract wife was one of the best friends of the woman that she bullied to death in college. She absolutely knew, because the comment does come up where she says, I remember
she did know
you.
that, but then I don't think she knew she was chosen by her till later, right?
That's correct.
Right.
But it helps smooth in why she was willing to, you know, put her hand out and protect him from the glass so soon, or she was willing to put herself out there, maybe more than she did on that very first scene where her so-called husband died. And she said, I was divorced 10 minutes ago, and walked out. She didn't obviously bond with that one. So just a thought. Well,
what about that fighting scene in the construction elevator? Oh my God, I really
love
enjoyed
that
that scene. I'm like, go for it.
I mean, the whole time I kept saying, well, she did learn jujitsu.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because
Yes.
yeah.
she can kick some ass. I mean,
Yeah.
in that sense, I did really like. Okay, we know the actress, right? Kim, no, so Hyun Seo-jin, I think is her
Young
name. We
Sojin.
know her. She's been in quite a few stuff. So, but this was the first time I liked the way she spoke. Do you notice her pacing of her?
Very even, very soft.
Very
She
like,
never
yeah, and almost
yelled.
people would say,
Monotone.
yeah, people would say it's
Very
almost
like no affect.
right. You would
Ah.
think that she's at first I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's like totally apathetic. She has issues. But really, no, she's just controlled because she has so many, she's very emotional. But I really liked the way she played her character. I mean, the acting was really good. Particularly, but I
Brilliant.
really liked her character. I thought she showed there's a calmness, but a little eerily I was like, oh my gosh, is she gonna like flip out? Like, I was hoping she wouldn't because I really liked her as a lead, and I'm glad she didn't. But then when I started realizing maybe that calmness is obviously her own healing that needed to happen, right? She needed to be, that's how she kept strong. That's what the fiance accused her of later. Maybe,
Yeah.
I guess that's how she is. And he was like,
Yeah.
I needed you to be this way. And you were like this way. Do you remember that? So
Yeah.
anyways, I just want to point out her emotional stability or her like pacing of the way she spoke.
Yeah. And remember at one point she said she was the hollow shell, and that's why she kept on that apartment. So that probably that persona and that calmness or that monotone that she was because she was hollow inside.
I mean, that's a good point. And then I have to add this one thing. Remember her little one-liners of, well, according to the manual, it is very
Yes.
important for me to. Okay, at first the first line I ignored it, but after every line she said that, I went, there is a very interesting point to this. Meaning she was like she's using the manual, but what she was saying was true in how somebody takes care of somebody in like a committed relationship or not so much marriage, just when she's like, this is what it looks like when you support each other in marriage. Do you remember that scene? And I actually liked it. She still referred to the manual, but I think it was somebody on this thread that we should have a manual for marriage. We should, but we don't, because there's no, but there are some things that what makes sense, which is like almost like, here's what I want to see in a healthy relationship. You should be supporting each other through difficult times. I think that was the moment I thought this could be written out as, what are the things that make a healthy couple? That's one of them, when you can support each other and lean on each other. And she was like, that's what you can share this with me. And I think that was a great moment. They were eating myeokguk in front of the dad. That's it. The dead dad, or the comatose dad. They were eating, they were in front of that. That's toxic in itself, right? Eating it in front of him. But okay, so I want to go around and ready. Who else wants to add something? What other layer am I not asking you?
Well,
I
love
A lot.
Okay,
You can
I-
see the
I'm
passion
probably
for
the
this
oldest.
drama.
okay, let's go with Joe. I saw you raise your hand, and then Kim.
Okay. The one thing I read the other day about this is that they were talking about a season 2. Will there be a season 2? Maybe they can, go on. They met the first time and, carry it from there. In my mind, I'm like, you don't need a season 2. Everything was said in that first,
Done.
encounter a little while later. I mean, in my head, I'd like to think that they're going to have the second little meetup and they're going to be, probably end up together with their cats and dogs. And I think that that's that's all you really needed to see. So, but people are saying it's such a great, show drama that they really wanted to have a second season.
Everybody wants a second season for any good show, right?
Exactly.
Don't do that. Yeah, just don't.
Yeah, I love the ending. We could talk about the ending too. But Kim, I wanted to give you a chance to say something. You were going to say something before you forget.
We had so much of the ex-wife and Gong Yu's, their issues and their past, but we really didn't get a whole lot of the female lead and her fiance, ex-fiance, whatever. And I kind of wanted a little more to that backstory. There was like just little sort of dribs and drabs, but I love Lee Ki-woo. He plays he's like the angsty, brooding, he does that really well.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice to have maybe more of their backstory because why did she keep that apartment? What was it about their relationship that made her not want to give him up to the degree that she kept this apartment for however many years it was? No,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
just me.
No, I
wish they
hear.
had-
I mean, I think he left her in such. He basically left. Never said
he
anything,
just
right?
walked. Yeah, he just walked
So
out.
there was such. I can see that why that's like what's that word? Excruciating. When someone just leaves and then there's no, like she said, no closure.
Absolutely
So
not.
probably all she had was that apartment. I guess she ended up. I guess she was already living there, so maybe that made sense. But I guess she couldn't let go because it wasn't like they were officially broken up. She even
And she
said it.
had
She was
no
like,
she had
I
no
didn't know
idea
what.
where he was.
Right. Yeah.
She
I mean,
had-
that is like right, and then she had to deal with everything. She had to deal
well,
with
she
the
had
aftermath.
somebody out there looking for him too.
Yeah, remember that girl that
Yeah,
she
Yeah.
worked
that was
with?
her friend. Yeah.
Yeah, that was her friend. That was there were a lot of interesting relationships because the whole time I was like, who's she looking for? Some of it was difficult to follow, but then I figured it out. But no, there's so many layers. I mean, yeah, that's in itself. I thought that was a very powerful, even though it was short, you're right. We could have seen more of that and his, but I guess the fact that she had no closure for 5 years,
Mhm.
I think that is very traumatic. Like,
Yeah,
think about
that
it.
apartment was another trunk. She was locked in that space. She
That's a
couldn't
good
move
point.
on. She's like locked in time.
And I
and
think people said that. Her
couldn't
friend
get in
said
the
that. Why are you
present.
still here? Yeah.
Hmm? Yeah.
No, I was
Um,
saying her friend she couldn't let go of the aquarium. Remember, he
Yeah. You
he
had
did a
asked
bit.
about things that might
Yeah.
have been wrong with it. You had thrown out some questions to us before
Yeah.
to think about. And if we
Yeah.
had to criticize something, and
Yeah,
most
yeah,
of us seem
please.
to love it, I still say 10 out of 10, but I'd read a lot online, like a split. Some people that I read love it. Some people absolutely hated it, couldn't get through 2 episodes. And I tried to think about why. And I think what bothered me in the first 2 episodes had to do with time shifting in a way that's not usually done in a story. Usually when we watch K-dramas, there's either a little caption that says 3 months before and you go back. But
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a K-drama that literally goes forward without telling anyone. And that's what was happening. Those first 2 episodes with the police, that
Mhm.
hadn't happened yet. So
Yeah.
I'm not
Mhm.
accustomed to that. And I think most of us aren't accustomed to that.
Yeah.
And it took
So it was
me
confusing.
2 episodes solid at least to start to understand what was going on there. These are
Yeah.
like previews of the future, but they didn't really clarify it. So I suspect if you were looking for just a rom-com or a romance, that might have really turned you off in the beginning because it took so much thinking to follow those 2.
I agree.
And
No, and I
yeah,
agree. I mean,
and
the
it
first
builds suspense, but it still was hard to follow. So
No, I don't think I think I remember when it clicked, when I was like, "Oh, wait, that is the police investigation. Wait, that is not the present moment." I think
it
it took me
hasn't
like
happened
5
yet.
episodes.
That
I
took
think I was still like
till
5
about
episodes and I
episode
went,
3.
"Oh," and or it's like maybe my husband's like, "I
Mhm.
think wait a second, we're confused. They're doing time jumps," you know? And so I think the frog did that as well. I wonder if it's the
Yes, that
latest
was the one I thought, the frog.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's the latest style of whatever, but it is confusing. But I know the first 2 episodes, I also know why it was most graphic. Like I actually would have stopped if first of all I didn't have the time to binge it, and 2 if it wasn't Kong Yu and the lead and just me wanting to watch. But the first 2 episodes were the most graphic that I was like, what is that? Like what am I watching? You know? So if and the episodes are short. So I think it helped for me to go on to the 3rd episode anyway to watch. And then that's probably when we started to see see things unfold. Okay, so
Can we talk about the stalker?
the
stalker.
stalker?
That was just such a weird. That could have just not been part of the story. It just seemed sort of ancillary and secondary, and it besides the fact of him sneaking in and killing the fish every month or so.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of didn't understand because she kept meeting with him. It's like that's just feeding into his delusion that he's an important part of her life, which I just never understood that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what do you guys think of the stalker? I was just showing Lisa's comment.
I just found it interesting that he'd been following her for quite some time or whatever. And when she was being interrogated by the police, they asked her, like, why didn't you talk to the police? And she said, I did. So, but you didn't really get a lot of the background info on that either. You didn't know, well, how far did you go? Because there were a few things in it that I thought was a little odd. Like, in other words, you see blood on your hallway in your apartment, but you're still going to go into the apartment. And then she takes that knife and she,
Yeah.
cleans it up and she puts it between a towel. And I'm like,
So that's probably the drama part of it, maybe like the suspension of disbelief, like,
Puts her
okay,
fingerprints all over it. Yeah.
yeah, fingerprints. And then the fact that
Exactly.
she met with the stalker, I was thinking that's interesting. You may think this is weird, but when she met with the stalker, and she wasn't, I think she was obviously fearful, but maybe it's like she knew him well enough. Like so it's kind of like a sick thing where I wouldn't meet with the stalker myself, but then I guess the way he was, like maybe she thought what was scarier was he was going to kill people around her. I mean, that's what he said. He would not kill her, right? Or they would die together. And that's why she's like, fine, let's die together or whatever. But then she was more scared for the people that she loved, that he was, starting to offer or some. So maybe that's why she was brave enough to face him. That was my only thing. She was like, I have to stop this. She was trying to save Kong Yu, And so that probably gave the courage. Cause at the end of the day, when you're like, when you love somebody, you'll do anything for that person. You don't even think of reason. You're like, I'm fine. I'm going to do this. And then obviously the reason comes later when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. That's the only thing I could think of. But yeah, the stalker, that's a question. I didn't even think about that. The purpose of the stalker. Why was that there?
He kind of.
I did like the neighbor. I love her. And her name, John.
Such a good actress.
Oh my
She was in
God.
Miss Day and Night.
Yeah.
Miss Day and Miss Night recently.
Yeah,
her.
she's in everything. She played a funny role in this. Yeah.
She did.
Mm-hmm.
She did.
Well, I would suggest to you the stalker is in the same position that everybody else in this book is in. He's trapped in a pattern that's only going to lead to his demise. He becomes fixated on a woman. He doesn't have to be married to her, but he's fixated on her. He murders somebody because he's fixated on her. He goes to what you and I would probably consider not even close to enough punishment for stalking, but what many women who are stalked deal with, meaning goes away for a little while and he shows up again and she can't be protected unless something happens to her seriously. So she's got to negotiate kind of with him, but he keeps trying to figure out, once he finds that trunk of hers, he's got to get into that trunk. He's fixated on the absolute wrong things. What he needs to think about is what's wrong with him, but can't do it. He can only fixate on the other thing, and he ends up dying. The people who can open the door, the people who can listen to people who give them advice, are the ones that begin healing in this. And I think that's a really good thing.
Oh,
mental health wise, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Say it again.
That's
a message.
Yeah. Say what you were saying.
Alpha. Yeah.
Yeah. Alpha.
Oh, no, I was just saying that probably that is the message of, this whole drama as well, that if you're able to overcome your darkness, your hopelessness, like there's hope, right? Where it shows in the lead at the end. But if you're unable to deal with your issues, it's how you meet the end of the stalker where you die and there's no way forward. So maybe that's also an underlying message.
Well, I mean, I think the message is exactly that. Like, people cannot necessarily, in order to be in a relationship that's healthy, let's put it this way, you need to be healing on your own journey. You need to be yourself. And I feel like that is like that. That's why I love the ending. Like, of course, it would have been nice if we saw a time jump. 2 years later, they're married and they're really married. That would have been fun. That's just the romantic in me, but it still ended happily. They were both happy on their own. So I do believe that if we had seen it ending, they are coming together because they needed to. I love the fact they didn't get together right away.
Me too.
Because I thought about it. I go, it would have been nice. And I go, no, they were not healthy, meaning they were getting healthier. They were healing through each other, but they needed to also heal on their own. Actually, very important. So I feel like that's the whole point. Two people who want to be in a relationship, you have to know you have to be healing on your own journey. You can still be married. You could still actually get married, but you're still healing. Does that make sense? The healing does not stop when you get married going, we're all good, thinking the marriage is the solving of and the end all. Right. But I love the fact that they were, she had a dog, he had cats. That was also therapeutic, right? And then they're healing on their own, and doing their own thing. And then that to me is a really great message. To see that we think that they would be great together. Linda, I felt like somebody else wanted to add something.
No, it wasn't me.
Anything else that we need to add or talk about here? Let me just, Zoe brought up a good point. Kong Yu did not necessarily kill his mother. Like I would reword that, right? Would you say it's like an assisted suicide?
I think they left.
The good
Yeah,
husband
silent.
had the
Yeah,
guilt about his
Yes.
mother. He couldn't protect her. He couldn't see that he was an 8-year-old child. Of course, he couldn't protect her.
Yeah.
And then he saw her misery, and then he assisted her in her demise. You're right. He didn't stop her. He
right. He
couldn't
didn't
have
stop her,
stopped
so
her.
I
He
would
was
say
a
it's like an
little,
assisted
yeah, he's a
suicide.
little boy.
Right.
He couldn't have stopped her.
No,
But
he
he
couldn't
doesn't
stop her,
know
but he
that.
definitely didn't. But
He
Zoe was
handed her a
saying, did
rope.
yeah, he did. He gave her a rope, so I think he understood why she wanted to die, and he also wanted her out of his misery. So that's why you see those assisted suicides, and you hear about them, people who are
Right. He
dying.
wanted to
and
save her.
yeah.
Save her.
So
So I think that's how I would reframe it, because he didn't kill his mother, but definitely he assisted with her suicide, and that's the other thing that I think that tortured him, right? I mean,
Mhm.
so
I
his
think,
own healing. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
So,
sorry. I was just thinking, I think they left that to the viewer's interpretation of it because they don't actually show that he gave her the rope. They show the rope on the table. And it was kind of
mm,
implied that he could have helped her. But also, if you look at him, he's a kid. Like
Mhm.
maybe
Yeah.
he took it upon himself as could I have stopped my mother, or before I let her die, I'm
Mhm.
responsible for her death. So I don't think they clearly indicated anything there. I
mm,
think it's the viewer. They've left it for the viewer's interpretation.
I
But
like that.
because he was a kid and he kind of assume or he took it upon himself that he killed his mother in some way. That's how I
yeah.
saw it.
I mean, I can see that. Yeah.
That's a good one, too.
Yeah, and I was gonna say one last thing. Or not one last thing if you guys didn't want to end, but I absolutely love the demolition of the house. I was like, why is he living in the house?
Mhm.
That's
It
just
was
me
wonderful.
because I mean, from the get go, I went, okay, I know it's a beautiful house and whatever, but wow, that house is just you don't want to live there,
That's like
And so,
exercising your demons.
Mhm.
I mean, and then what did she? Was she the one that took the first swing or told him to take
She
the first
did.
swing? I
She
absolutely
took the
love that
first.
moment. Like it's almost like let's knock down these walls of the trauma that you are having and or whatever experience. And it's almost like that symbolic, also physical moment of knocking down something. He could have moved out, but I love that he actually demolished the house.
Well,
That to
he
me
was
is just new beginning.
the way he said, because I could come back. There could be a time where I want to come back.
You could say that.
And that is so true on any of us that have ever had any emotional things in our lives is you come to another point and you kind of think back. And
Yeah.
nostalgia changes things when you think
Yeah.
back. So it was
Mhm.
really good that he just demolished it so he couldn't make that choice.
Totally. Yes, Joe.
Real quick, I just wanted to make a comment because we were talking about the dynamics between the present wife and her fiance. And someone in the chat, I think it's Lisa, said something, and that's the point I wanted to bring across because it hit home with me. He was gay, he was bisexual, and so
Yeah.
he left because it came out that he was who he was. So he left out of a humiliation and whatnot. And she didn't know. She was trying to protect him. I've been there, done that. And she was trying to protect him. And he just left. And so that's why when you see her lying on the floor sobbing because she wasn't able to protect him any longer and he left,
Oh,
and
that's a
then when he
good
came
point.
back, they
Yeah.
had that conversation. Not to say they'd get back together or they could or couldn't, but that was
Right.
the gist of why he left. It wasn't because he did not care about,
Yeah,
care for her.
I agree with that.
He-
Yeah,
it just
totally.
came
Yeah, no,
out.
I agree with that. It was the humiliation of what was exposed. Yeah,
Yes.
and then I think this is a good way to end on, even though it could make us talk even more.
One comment I have,
Yes, Alba.
Ginny, if you can. So when you meet Gong Yu, please ask him if he really loves tomatoes or not.
Someday when I meet him, sure, I'll ask
When
him.
you
What do you
meet
think
him,
of
ask him.
tomatoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be
I'll
the
make
first
a
thing on
mental
your
note of
list.
that. Or I could be mute because that's happened to me when I'm like freaking out on something and not saying anything. But because he's extremely intelligent, I've heard, like people have said. So I can see myself not being able to say anything in Korean, even though he can speak English. So no, I'll definitely ask him. But what is this? What do you think of this comment on that note? We're just talking about healing. Like, do you think what do you think of this comment from somebody? So Kong Yu has mentioned a couple times he wanted to be a father, feeling like that would help him, with his own trauma of dealing with his own father. Thoughts?
I'm sorry. It's what you're talking about earlier in relationships, and that is bringing something in to heal you. It isn't going to work. If you're
Yeah.
not healed when you have that baby, that is not going to work. So it's
Yeah.
something he
I love
thought
that.
about, but it wasn't going to work. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, Sophie's like, I think Sophie was referring to Kong Yu. Yes, he does speak English. I know, but you still want to speak Korean to the actors, you know? Yeah, that'd be great to meet him. So no, I just thought that was interesting. No, I actually think, that's exactly right. Like, it might have made him brought him some happiness, but I don't think it would have brought the healing on his own. And for him to be the father, the ultimate, like a father that someone would want, right, in his own sense, right, using his child as a way to heal.
And
That
he's
makes sense.
picturing
Yeah.
it. He's also picturing a healthy kid who doesn't cause him any trouble, who only loves him, who only wants to be with him. He's not picturing a child. Okay.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah,
that puts a lot of
exactly.
pressure on a
Mhm.
kid to fix you, because a kid
I
is not going
mean,
to fix you.
that's a good point. So Kim was saying it's a lot of pressure on a kid to fix you, right? To fix the parent,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Very
Be
good
the other
point.
cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Any last words? Did you feel like you got through your notes, Linda?
Oh, no, but I'm not going to talk to you anymore about it. I'll write something someday.
Okay, write something. And then let's real briefly, even if you haven't seen When the Phone Rings, we got to just talk real briefly about the When the Phone Rings. The reason why I like the parallel with When the Phone Rings and this one, we're seeing also marriage. It's fascinating a lot this year, seeing the way the marriages have been portrayed, you know? Let's just talk about what you like about When the Phone Rings. Besides Kim, who wants to answer? What do
Who
you
else
like
has
about it?
seen it?
Kim is
Has
the only one that
everyone-
hasn't watched it yet.
Oh, okay.
I'll start.
Joe,
because-
Joe,
Spoiler
talk.
alert.
Joe, you start.
Honestly, we need to do a deep dive on this one. This is just so good. It's really, really good. I don't know. I'll be in the chat if I'm not invited back, but this is phenomenal. And what I really love about this, there's so many twists and turns on it. And what they do is they literally show a scene and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't want to spoil. And then they'll show the elongated scene of that scene later down the line. So then you start to really figure it out. And you're like, you're running forward with the thing. You have to step back a little bit and then you kind of go fast forward again. It's crazy. I took sign language for a year. I don't know how to do it, but I love that they have that as communication in this. I think it's great. I think the actors are so good. He is the coldest of the cold, but deep down there's something. I love this thing, and I don't want to go into a deep dive because I got lots of notes. But it is
Good. Wait for the end. Wait.
well, I guess this is what I like
We'll
to do.
talk soon at the end. Yeah.
But
No,
honestly,
I mean, I
go ahead, Jeannie.
no, go. Finish your thought.
No, I just love everything about it. Every time one of the episodes ends, you're sitting on the edge of your chair and you're waiting for the next one to start because it's like, you can't wait to see. And her character is so complex. It's just crazy what she does, what she's not doing. And then when, she speaks and all, I don't want to give a spoiler, but it is,
I've seen enough
I'll have to
clips to know that she
well
does.
done. It's
Yeah,
well
we'll
done.
have to eventually watch. No, it's fun. I'd love to hear from Linda and Alva, but I do that it's almost another trope. I don't know what to call it, but when the male lead is cold, but he's burning within with passion. I mean, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I do love that. I do love that. And so that's what
too.
hit me when I saw that. So
Yeah.
he looks cold and he looks like he hates his wife's guts, but not at all. He's totally in love with her. That's my thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, Linda and Alva, thoughts?
That passion is going to explode. I'm just waiting for that episode where they get together. But yes, it's very intriguing. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. I missed the memo about it not airing this weekend. And then yesterday night, I clicked it in. I'm like, I have to wait for one more week. And it's so hard for me to wait for something for one more week because I have to go back to the previous episode a little bit. And then, but yes, I think their chemistry is something, again, to look out for. just that lack of communication as well so far. I'm like, why are they not talking to each other more? That's frustrating me a little bit, but I guess that's all part of the K-drama package as well. Yeah, I'm just on the edge of my seat. I love both the leads, and because I love him so much in this show, I've gone back and started watching snippets of Hospital Playlist just to look at him again.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Inside, he's that fun, warm person. When you know, you if you look at some of the making of this drama and on other clips, you see how much he's unlike his character, which they're portraying here.
Yeah,
So
totally.
and he's such a cute heart. So yeah, I'm just excited for this show.
I think
I
our
never
chemistry
thought
is
I'd
really
watch it.
good. Yeah. Linda, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
I think it because it starts completely differently than the other one that we're talking about. I like that. I haven't read it. I haven't come across anybody yet who hasn't fallen madly in love with that show on the first 2 episodes, which is so contrary to what happened in The Trunk, where a lot of people couldn't get past the first 2. So my head is now trying to figure out, which I haven't thought about enough yet, why? What's the difference? And I guess to me, so far, part of the difference is you have a smaller cast. We're really looking largely at him and his sort of wife and this one little family. So they're all really integrated together. The symbolism isn't, I don't see too much yet, but I'm going to keep looking because it hasn't gone anywhere. You know, it's going to be a hot romance. It's got to be, because he just looks at her. Again, you're absolutely right. There's many of these in our K-dramas, the self-sufficient man who then totally goes crazy over a woman and can't live without her. And she is such an interesting woman.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to learn more about her backstory. So, I mean, I'm watching it too, but I'm like, I don't know about you all. I like to binge. I'm a binger. I want to watch 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, and I want to feel every inch of it. And it's real hard to watch them once a week and get into it. So I might save it, and we should talk about it later.
We definitely will talk about it later.
Save it till I get a few episodes to watch it once so I can see how it goes, you know?
Yeah. I think, I know for me why I was hooked. I expected, I was actually not going to, it was one of the dramas I saw and I'm like, oh, I love him and she's cute. Okay. But I don't like the premise. It kind of looks weird, like a thriller, not my type. That's how I saw it. But when we played it and I happened to watch it with 2 other tour participants in Toronto, it was not that way. It was definitely kept you on the edge of the seat the first 2 episodes because the mystery is the kidnapper, right? Or the phone. But what I ended up liking about it, that I realized that it's masked, like the whole tone of it is masked. It's really a typical K-drama. It's really a typical K-drama with the Chebol family trope thing. And he's all, like I said, has no stoic emotions and you don't like him and he's cold, but you do know he's a lovable person, that kind of thing. I tend to love that. And then the female lead feeling like he hates her. Like, don't forget, she thinks he doesn't love her. He actually wants her to die. He could care less. That's why that whole thing ensued. I just love that kind of push-pull kind of thing. And I saw that in the first 2 episodes. That's why I think I expected more from The Trunk. And then I saw The Trunk and I was like, this is graphic. But thank goodness we stuck to it because it's beautiful. It's a really well-written, I think, well-acted K-drama. I don't know if I would rate it. Would I rate 10 out of 10? I don't know yet. I definitely really enjoyed it. But so yes, let's just see we'll have to talk about it. And yes, we have to wait for it. So unfortunately, until next week. But I guess it's a good time.
Do you think he realizes that she is talking to him on the phone when she's on that ledge? That's what I want to know. You don't think so? You think she's going to cover it?
I mean, I think I saw some previews and I don't think he knows it's her.
Because she uses one of those voice manipulators.
But I'm
you can't tell
thinking
the voice.
she's standing there, she turns, he sees her with a different phone. I'm wondering if he's going to pretend.
Oh, that's a good point too. He probably pretend. Yes.
Because then you see him later on, she's teaching him sign language. Right. I have a feeling there's going to be a turn there. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I mean, you're right. He could be pretending even from the very early on.
He's smart.
We don't, you know how these twists and turns. Either way, I think that the reason why we're all watching is because of anticipation. Keeping us very, very good way of keeping us anticipated to watch. So that said, this was Sophie was saying, I'm not sure I'll read The Trunk. Yeah, I know it was also based on a book. I think When the Phone Rings is based on is it based on a Naver webtoon too? But anyways, I wanted to end with you guys still on here. The K drama, if you're not watching it, it's already done. Is Chungyeon. Chungyeon, The Star is Born. A Star is Born. It's with Kim Teddy. She sings Pansori. I don't know if you're watching that. I wanted to give you one recommendation. I just stopped it because I got distracted in Korea, and then I'm finishing it up, and it's really well done. So I just had to recommend that because she actually literally rehearsed and practiced along with the other actors for like several years to do that. She's literally singing Pansori. Pansori is just like that traditional sorrowful singing. If you didn't know the history, but yeah, I just saw that's something anybody here see Jonghyun? Did anybody watch it?
I've watched the first couple episodes so far.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying it. So that's something I recommend. And I'll leave you guys with this. One recommendation for anybody else on here that you would like to recommend a K-drama. Go. Linda.
Out of the blue? Okay. If you liked, and I know a lot of people don't like the thriller suspense. I love them. If you like them and you didn't see The Frog, watch The Frog. The Frog is deep, it's dense, and it is definitely a thriller. And the acting is absolutely superb. So I guess I would say for thriller and mystery lovers, watch The Frog if you haven't seen it. I believe it's on Netflix.
Yeah. It's also a Netflix exclusive. Mm-hmm. If you notice, Netflix exclusives are a little different category, you know?
Well, they can drop the whole thing, I think, right?
They can drop the whole thing. They're like a little bit more graphic, like DP, The Frog, Squid Game. This one, The Trunk. Okay, Joe, do you have a recommendation?
I don't at the time right now because I'm just basically watching Iron Family, which is long.
I love Iron Family.
Well, that's a good thing.
I love Iron Family.
Okay, good. And the other one is I'm trying to get into Brewing Love.
Love it.
I haven't started that either.
Yeah?
Okay.
It's super
I
cute.
just started that one, so.
Okay, Brewing Love. Kim, is that your recommendation?
Okay, Brewing Love. Okay, so I'm watching Brewing Love, and I'm having a really hard time because it only drops 2 episodes per week. So I started Uncanny Counter to kind of fill in the time. And I haven't seen season 1 or season 2. And if you've not seen Uncanny Counter, that is just it's really fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
And she's great in Business Proposal too. If you haven't seen that, I love her in that.
She's amazing. But Brewing Love, if you haven't started it, it's kind of, it's a polar opposite from like the heavy and the dark and the thriller and the mystery.
Yeah,
but it's very sweet.
Okay.
Yeah. But Jeannie's going to love it because it's very psychological because it has a male character who is very protective and the male character is over empathetic, and that's kind of the core of the whole thing. He has too much empathy, and that's a whole new thing to look at. So it's been I agree with Kim. It's very fun.
Okay, cool.
They describe him as an empath.
Oh,
yeah, he is an empath for sure.
Okay. Ooh, okay. You just got me intrigued. You guys are the first people to mention that. Okay. And then Alva, any recommendations from you?
So I think if you like slow dramas, something that talks to you, beyond everything else. The similar pace, I would say, is My Mister, which I know you often recommend, but it also reminded, when I was watching The Trunk, they're not similar in any way, but that pace and that emotion, that hardship was very similar to My Mister. And I think that's why I started enjoying The Trunk a lot more. Family by Choice is another great feel-good drama, family-oriented. And yes, I started watching Brewing Love. I love the fact that Brewing Love also is, there's a difference of dynamics between the male lead and the female lead. The female is more like the male and she's more outgoing, while the male lead is more the subdued one here. So I think I like that kind of different dynamics, which is different from usual K-drama. It's a little bit more mature as well. The Trunk similarly has so much of mature content, mature acting, mature storyline. So it's very different from the rest of the. Give it a chance. I would say give The Trunk a chance. If you've put it off before, come back. It's a drama where you don't need to binge watch. You don't need to watch the whole episode in one sitting because it's heavy. So what I did was I just watched them in parts and take your time through it.
Wow, you went to really liking it because I remember you're like, should I continue this one? I'm like, finish it.
Yeah.
I had to share Carrie's comment. She's waiting till they all come out because she goes, it's too hard to watch to wait. I think you're right. I mean, it's
Good
true.
idea, Gary. Hi,
The
Gary.
the angst, right? We don't want to deal with extra angst. Well, see, I'm glad we have these recommendations. Now I'm like, I might need to start brewing love because I need something chipper. So
Yes.
and then you saying that it's the guy as an empath, I love it. You don't really see that. So
And she's
Thanks,
she's
guys.
former special forces, so she's kind of a badass.
yeah, I did see that in some of the clips of
Badass.
like, okay, clearly she has that background. So
Yeah.
okay, love it, guys. I love that you guys stayed with me to the very end. Thank you so much,
Of course we did.
Alva, Linda, Joe, and Kim. It was so nice having you guys. Let's do this.
Woohoo!
Yay! Someone take a screenshot.
Always
Well,
good to
let's
be with
close the camera.
you. Love
Kim.
seeing you.
Kim, do this.
I can
Well,
do
here,
this
like this.
one.
Let's all pose, and I know Rashta's going to take a screenshot.
I have to do this one.
Yeah. Oh, this is too.
My thumb.
Anyways, this is like the latest thing, as you see, are all the
I guess
stars
it is,
going
isn't
summer.
it? Yeah, just one.
It is. Someone told me this is outdated.
I know,
So
but I
nice.
finally learned to
Serious?
do it.
I mean, it's cute, so we'll still do it.
It is.
Thank you guys
I
for
love this
joining. Have a wonderful Saturday. Keep in touch, and
You
let's
too.
watch
Thank
our
you.
K-dramas. Let's watch our K-dramas. Bye.